Hello, and welcome to this very special episode of Anime Audio Commentary. This episode marks exactly 5 full years that I've been doing this podcast, and to mark the occasion, I've decided to watch something very special. So without further ado, I'm going to watch Spy Family Code White, and if you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So, you might be wondering that why I, as a Spy Family fan, have not watched this movie until now, given that it came out about 2.5 years ago. And there's actually something of an interesting story behind that, because I am somewhat blessed to have a local Walmart that has a bizarrely good selection of anime, for whatever reason. About a year ago, I noticed that this was on sale for like a reasonable price, like a Blu-ray DVD combo pack, and I bought it. And as I was checking out, the woman at the cash register, asked me for my ID for this. Like, this DVD got flagged, and I was just so utterly bamboozled that it put me off watching this. Because, I'm not, at risk of, faking an ID to buy alcohol or dangerous things, I am well above that age limit, and I don't look like I'm younger than the age limit, too, so just the fact that I got carded for a DVD, and a DVD that's obviously a cartoon, it's like, what are we doing here? And just the whole thing put me off watching this, because, I wasn't rude, but the woman was getting kind of mouthy with me because I expressed concern as to why I was being carded for a DVD. And she said something to the effect of, are you sure this cartoon isn't going to affect your thinking? And I was kind of rude. I won't repeat what I said, but, but I figured I bought the DVD. I might as well watch it. After all, I do like Spy Family. Now, this film is of interest to me for a couple reasons, because I had heard it was written by the mangaka, who, I like the guy. He writes some stuff I like. But the question is, with him writing it, I can only assume this is self-contained, but where does it fall continuity-wise, That's the real question, because I think we can sort of assume that, things aren't going to, be unresolved in this film that spill over into the anime, or the manga, rather. But, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, so clearly Lloyd's up to some monkey business here. I naturally assumed he was the man, but, perhaps he disguised himself as that debutante. He really is a master of disguise. I don't have a source for this. It's purely a thing I remember seeing, but I want to say there's some FBI, behind-the-scenes actor who essentially said that, you can disguise a woman as, anyone, essentially, but you can't do that with a man. And I don't know. I guess it really speaks to the idea that Lloyd Forger is perhaps the greatest spy of all time, considering that he can so effectively disguise himself no matter what the circumstances require. Now, I do have to wonder as to the plot of this, because I really don't know anything. I'm going in blind. But as with, in my mind, the pinnacle of Spy Family, you do need a good mix of Lloyd, Yor, and Anya doing spy stuff, doing killer stuff, and doing child stuff. And in my mind, the pinnacle is the bomb plot where they first encountered Bond, their dog. And that has a good mix of stuff. Already, it's sort of shaping up there's a mix of things. We have Yor butchering people as Lloyd does spy work. And it seems as though there's a bit more blood. There is some visceral arterial spray when she stabbed that guy. So I'm wondering if, I hate to say it, but that woman might have been right at Walmart, actually. If they were a bit more free with the violence here, and especially if there's a bunch of it, because, I'm just going to surreptitiously check the rating real quick. I shouldn't think that that's enough to, like, get anyone in trouble here, but, you never know. Like, the, whatever that governing body is, they're often strict about that kind of thing, you know? So it seems like, really, the purpose of this whole sequence here is just to sort of, recap everything, you know? Lloyd's a spy, he does spy stuff. Yor is an assassin, she kills things. Anya's a psychic who reads their minds. And she thinks that everything is very, very cool, despite it being... Well, I mean, I guess it is cool, but Anya doesn't quite grasp the danger of the situation, you know, on account of mainly being a kid. So, according to Google, this is PG-13, you know. I really don't think I should have been carded over a PG-13 movie. Oh well. So, it seems as though that this whole introductory section is just kind of like maybe not a joke, but just like a recap, you know? Wow. Peanut butter pizza. That sounds absolutely foul. I fail to see how that's better than yours cooking. You know, the joke is that she would kill them all by virtue of her cooking, but like... I don't know, man. Lloyd's a better cook on paper, I guess, but maybe not in practice if that's what he's making. Ooh. So it seems as though cooking is perhaps a theme of this film. You know, there's a cooking class. The students at Eden Academy will have to cook a dessert. And I don't know. I'm of two minds of this, because on the one hand, you know, it is like a nice thing to get kids to, like, do a little amateur baking, but something tells me the bar is going to be a lot higher than making chocolate chip cookies, you know? And frankly, when you get into, like, stuff beyond that, it's, kind of beyond the abilities of, your average kindergartner. Oh dear. So, the situation is, a little bit dire, you know. Anya and Damien are on thin ice here. And I guess the situation's also rather serious as well. You know, you can get a Stella Star if you do well in the competition. So I guess, you know, we do have to get the recap out of the way here. The Stella Stars are sort of the whole point here. You know, I don't think Lloyd's actual mission has been recapped, because that's... Well, speak of the devil, here we go, I guess. But, you know, that's the whole point. Without the Stella Stars, Operation Strix kind of, doesn't really happen. Yeah, you know, it's, not exactly a super elegant exposition dump, but I do suppose it is sort of needed. Now, I guess it is understandable that Lloyd would be, you know, putting his thumb on the scale, so to speak, in this competition. However, I do feel it is kind of inelegant of him to just be standing in, like, his trademark green suit on a blue roof in broad daylight spying on people. You know, he's a master spy, lest we forget, and that seems like a real good way to get spotted, and I imagine Eden Academy wouldn't look too happily on that, especially seeing as how he's not even disguised. So, naturally, Lloyd would be working to help Anya, however surreptitiously. The question is, exactly how much is he going to put his thumb on the scale here? Because, it would be really good if Anya won, but that also might be suspicious. Of course, here we have the other common running thread in Spy Family, in that Lloyd being the best is given other work, you know? Yeah, Operation Strix is a full-time thing, but, Wise here, the agency, they're, short on people, so, you know, sometimes Lloyd has to pull double duty. Oh. So this seems, awfully like Lloyd's being reassigned here. I mean, surely that's not the case, you know? Okay, so it's, I guess, internal politics here. You know, some people are trying to push this other agent to do stuff. That's... That's incredibly short-sighted in my mind, because I feel like the idea here was that Wise, despite being, glow-in-the-dark, state security agents here, they were somewhat competent and intelligent despite being short-handed. And, man, this isn't good, because, I guess Lloyd will have more free time, but it just might cost the country here. Lest we forget, the setting here is like Cold War era Germany, like East and West and all that, and there is a Cold War brewing, and it probably wouldn't take too terribly much to turn it into a hot war, and that's what everyone really wants to avoid. Oh dear. Speaking of things boiling into a hot war, unfortunately, Yor has misunderstood what's going on here. Lloyd was simply saving a woman's hat from blowing away in the wind. Of course, what she doesn't realize is that this woman is Fiona Frost, another agent and one who has a absolutely massive and unprofessional crush on Lloyd. Lloyd is oblivious to this, probably to his benefit, frankly, but yeah, so I think this is probably going to be a large thread in this film, the fear of adultery and all that. Because I guess, as ever, Fiona's trying to angle to make herself the wife in this whole Operation Strix scheme. I guess I'm kind of interested to see how jealous Yor gets, because she doesn't seem to me to be remarkably prone to jealousy. At least not in the way that jealousy usually manifests. She's more of an anxious sort of person. I mean, I get being anxious about this whole thing, because relationship issues... Well, issues is probably putting it too strongly, but, relationship uncertainties, I guess, is a recurring theme here in Spy Family, not even in this movie necessarily. And, man, one of the aggravating factors in Yor's life is that really, her friends don't seem to have her best interest in heart. They're talking about the signs of adultery and all that, and they list out 3 things that are almost assuredly going to happen just by virtue of the movie needing a plot. I mean, I can kind of get that they're sort of looking out for her, maybe, but, they've stirred the pot before needlessly. Oh dear, so Lloyd, the poor guy, he's come to the understanding that with the end of Operation Strix, that means no more Yor, no more Anya, the whole family life goes away. I feel like he's not necessarily incentivized to exit cleanly, Or rather, I guess what would be better for his job as a spy is not necessarily what would be best for Anya and Yor. Very, very unfortunate. And I guess the problem is with Anya's class assignment here, Lloyd is, I guess, maybe not necessarily incentivized to help anymore. Ooh. No, this is much better, actually. If Anya can get that Stella Star, then they can push back and keep the thing going. Alright, this is something. So, that means, Lloyd can get back to spying on the principal to decide what might be the best dessert to his liking and all that. But, this sort of, I guess this aligns a couple things here. It aligns Lloyd's sort of nascent affection for his family and to want to keep together, but it also gives it a professional backing, so he can cope and say he's doing it for the mission when, we all know darn well what his real motivation is. So, I guess it could be reasonably expected that Lloyd's, masterminding the whole thing. He knows what would make for a good dessert, but the trouble is, it's an old-fashioned thing from a remote part of the country, so, if you want it, you have to travel to get it. And the trouble is, this is for his job. This is something that's presented to Anya as being like a fun little thing. But this is also like travel, which Yor's friends warned against. but it also means they'd have to, like, sleep somewhere out of the home. And, we haven't been given too much information on the sleeping arrangements here, but I think it's safe to say that Lloyd and Yor aren't exactly laying on top of each other. They probably have distinctly separate spaces. I don't think they share about anything. So the trouble is, if they're traveling, they might have to do it for the cover, Oh, that's brutal. Yor's like, oh, I'm being invited along. I guess he's not cheating. Oh, man, the assumption that you're not invited along, that is grim. Now, normally during the opening theme, I would sit quietly with reverence, but today I am obligated to my sponsor. Today's sponsor is none other than myself. You may not know this, but I write light novels, and I've written quite a few. Today, I'm going to tell you about the eccentric detective Yamamoto, in which the intrepid, if drunken detective solves a wide variety of cases with the help of her assistant Satoshi. Ranging from finding missing pets and surveilling cheating spouses to catching a high-end cat burglar and preventing the murder of a local business magnate, no case is too big or too small for Detective Yamamoto. Even when she's forced to work with, and occasionally against, the police, and even when she must contend with her fear of the supernatural, nothing will prevent the eccentric detective from doing what needs to be done to solve the case. If this sounds like something you'd like to read, then by all means, consider purchasing books in the Eccentric Detective Yamamoto series by me, Frederick Fitzgerald, through Amazon. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the episode. That was a nice little montage. I've decided to just, sit in reverence and watch it, but a whole bunch of little storytelling happened there. Naturally they're taking a train, this being a proxy for Europe and all that. Anya wanted to play cards in their train compartment, but Lloyd insists they study. They stop, they get food, Anya's happy about that, They get tickets, they bring the dog with them. But interestingly, we did also see two suspicious characters board the train. And more to the point, Anya, looking to shy away from her work, went to the bathroom and found a key. And a nice little, neat, ornate brass key. So unfortunately here, Bond has seen fit to witness the future here. And the future informs Anya that the key unlocks a chest, the chest has something that looks valuable, and a couple of men are saying that, hey, this is like real important stuff, so naturally, being a curious child who is enamored by all things adventurous and exciting, she has decided that, yeah, it's time to cause a little bit of trouble. Oh man, Lloyd's just dumping on Anya's handwriting. I mean, that's kind of a pet peeve of mine, because I remember being as young as Anya was, and I remember my handwriting was chicken scratch. So it's like, I don't think you can necessarily criticize a child as young as Anya for having poor handwriting. Because, writing's difficult. It's difficult to be legible. I remember when I was young, my hand would cramp up if I had to do a certain amount of writing, and man. So, I get it, Anya should improve and all that. This isn't to say she should stop writing, but, ooh. Okay, so this is interesting. So other couples being affectionate and got embarrassed, and, she's deciding to check on Anya. So naturally, I think, things are gonna hit the fan, so to speak, because Anya's wandering off through the train. She's walking into, I guess, car number 8, apparently based on the numbering at the door. We don't know what car the passenger section was in, so she's probably walked quite a ways down the train, and I mean, trains are always sort of like a classic setting for some really cool action stuff, cool things happen on trains because it's a confined location. You can't exactly just escape easily. I do find it interesting that despite witnessing the future, Bond is still trying to prevent her from opening the suitcase. You know, it's not going to stop Anya. I mean, we've already witnessed that the future can be changed, but, I mean, Anya's impulse is kind of nice, I guess. She's worried about national security. You know, whatever her conception of that is as a child. Now, it's interesting that inside the suitcase, there's a little chest, and inside the little chest is what is apparently like a chocolate bonbon or something. Now, unfortunately, being startled as she was by a sudden intruder, Anya... Oh, okay, I thought she was gonna, like, drop it and lose it, but no, she ate it. So, unfortunately, she's eaten it just in time for the people who are upset about having lost the key to start, you know, poking around here. Now, the question is, what was in that chocolate? Was it, I can't imagine what it would be. Like, it must have some secret, like, chemical formulation or, God forbid, be, like, a bioweapon or something. Because I'm trying to think, like, what could be small enough to hide in a chocolate bonbon? You know? I mean, evidently it's clearly important if it's being smuggled in a suitcase that agents have to identify based on the stickers on it. Oh, yeah, they've stolen secrets that were obtained by infiltrating a research lab over the course of 3 years. So, clearly something is, not good here. I mean, Anya, in her delusional, childlike imaginings, she imagines that it's simply like, you know, the best chocolate ever created, and that was the trade secret here, but, yeah, unfortunately, geopolitics does not necessarily rest on the deliciousness of a chocolate recipe. I mean, I dare say the world would be a far better place if that were the case, but sadly it isn't. So, immediately, these two agents, you know, they notice that the suitcase has been opened and that the chocolate is missing. So, really, they're on, like, red alert now. Like, this is DEFCON 1. Something has hit the fan, but we don't really know what. And I guess the big question is that, they don't really know who's done it here, who's taken the chocolate, so... Oh dear. So, I mean, they're already of the belief that they should kill whoever did this. The question is finding that person on this train. Because I have to imagine there's, a fair few people on this train, you know, other passengers and things like that. So Anya at least has the good sense to get out of Dodge, but, it might not do her much good, you know? Now, that's unfortunate, you know, some of these villains had foresight here to lock some of the doors behind him. So, they haven't got any proof that Anya did eat the chocolate, or, you know, just stole it, but, oh, here we go. So, whether you heard Anya crying or whatnot, you know, she managed to just, like, pry open a locked door with her raw strength, which, you know, that's something. And I guess it is also kind of nice that, Yor's probably likely to believe whatever, you know, story Anya concocts here, that, you know, these are bad men. And, you know, they certainly don't look like good guys either, but, ooh, you know, I'm kind of disappointed that, Yor just told Anya to close her eyes. That's a good thing, but then, you know, we didn't get to see what she did to him. I mean, I guess it is nice that Yor is concerned about, displaying violence in front of her adopted child. You know, you can't do stuff like that. You gotta be careful, but, oh dear. Lloyd seemingly remains unaware of What's happened? Oh dear. I feel like it's not necessarily going to be an incident, but it's probably something you should be aware of. So, the trains finally arrived. They're somewhere up north. I imagine it's gotta be like, Switzerland or something like that. It being a snowy, mountainous place. Yeah, I don't know. The setting's got, it's got potential for all kinds of shenanigans, because, trains are one thing. A lot of good stuff happens on trains, but now that they're in, a mountainous area, good stuff happens there, too, because, like a train, it's sort of a secluded area. If you're going up on a mountain to hang around up there, there's only so much you can do. It's not hospitable to traveling on foot, but it's even less hospitable to traveling in other manners. And, if you have a cable car, that's even better, I imagine you could make an excellent scene with Yor and a bunch of villains on a cable car, and she just, beats the brakes off them. Something like that would be really cool. Oh dear. So, I guess it makes sense that after a long day of traveling, they're stopping at a restaurant to eat and all that, but, they do have to tie up Bond and leave him outside, which is kind of unfortunate, but I guess it does make sense. So, this is part of Lloyd's master plan. They want the dessert known as Mere Mere, and I guess, he wants to witness it firsthand, see what it's like, and, probably determine how to recreate it. So, unfortunately, I take that back. Never mind, this is good, actually. While Bond is forced to sit outside and watch, that very kind waitress bought him a bowl of food. And, she didn't need to do that. But, yeah, that's very nice. I assumed Bond was going to witness something bad and then, be forced to sort of communicate that to Anya by virtue of her mind-reading powers, but I guess that's not the case. Oh dear. So I guess we're back to the romance subplot here. Yor has noticed something else that's suspicious. I mean, her friend told her that a change in wardrobe is indicative of adultery. And, maybe there is some truth to that, but it turns out that wearing heavier clothing is just something you do when you go somewhere colder, if I went, up to Canada and I wore, a heavier shirt, I don't think that's justification for my girlfriend to think I'm cheating on her. Ooh. So with the chef here bringing up that military aircraft out front of the restaurant as sort of like a conversation starter, something tells me that's going to come up later, Ooh. Alright, now we've got Yuri. So, I guess that plane likely is going to come up, Phrygius, the place where Lloyd and the others went to, is home to a military base, apparently, and Yuri wants to take some time off to visit. Whether it's that he's going to be snooping on Yor and Lloyd in his professional capacity, or, just because he's a clingy brother-in-law, I guess we'll find out, but, oh, that's something. For his boss to essentially tell him, not to stick his nose into the military's business. It's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that, It's good that they're wrangling him, because I guess if they didn't do that, he might cause an incident. Now back to that chef. He's telling, I guess, a story that Lloyd would find familiar. That when the war went on, this whole place was like a battlefield, essentially. Lots of air combat and all that. And that, the war was tough on him when he was younger. And, lest we forget, Lloyd was a child during the previous war, so, if nothing else, he can relate that, yeah, a lot of bad things happen, and it would be nice to prevent more bad things in the future. Now, speaking of preventing bad things, Bond has noticed, I guess, an advancing group of soldiers. And that clanking sound that one of them made, that kind of strikes me as like, it's a cane, I guess. I suppose I assumed it would have been like a prosthetic leg, I guess not. So, naturally, these people seem like they're gonna be trouble. Those little villains from on the train, they had mentioned a colonel, and, I can't exactly read military insignias here and, rank stripes and all that, but I reckon that guy might be the colonel. And he seems to be a jerk, given that he's not above confiscating the dessert from Lloyd's table. Yeah, so, the colonel does kind of make a good point here that, you're under military jurisdiction, we need to ensure that our men are fed, but I don't think that extends to stealing dessert, So Lloyd, he might be poking his nose where it doesn't belong here, saying that, look, my daughter's looking forward to this, could you order something else? And it's like, I get it, but this guy seems like a real jerk. And I guess to that end, he's proposing a competition. The rules as of yet are unclear, but something tells me it's accidentally going to play into Lloyd's strengths here. Ooh. So that's something. They're presented with a variety of desserts and they have to describe all the varieties of sugar used to cook in them. And that strikes me as a very open-ended question here, because on the one hand, there's powdered sugar, there's granulated sugar, there's confectioner's sugar, there's brown sugar and all that. And those are several varieties, but the reason why fruit is sweet is because of fructose, which is a type of sugar, but it's just a different chemical formulation. Surely this guy isn't gonna pull some monkey business where he demands, the chemical composition of the various types of sugar, right? Because, some of the desserts, there's what looks to be like a strawberry on it, he did also say be as specific as possible, so I imagine, yeah. Okay, so Lloyd's picked, one form of sugar per thing, and he's declared correct by the chef. So, I guess he's, well, I don't know. The colonel seems sure of himself here. So not only was he sure of himself, but he wrote down, the amount used in each dessert, which, I don't know. That seems like it's bending the rules, I guess. You didn't say describe the amount. Alright. So Lloyd's in a bit of a bind here, because, for his mission to go well, he does need that dessert, and clearly he's not getting it now. The question is, well, I guess it really isn't a question. I don't think he would, engage in reprisal against the colonel, but, I don't know. Even so, I feel like this isn't the last we've seen of that guy. Oh dear. So the plot has gotten a bit thicker. They're not going to have any more ingredients for the dessert until Monday, by which time they have to leave, and the chef doesn't have the recipe written, and he's also unwilling to share it. I get it, some recipes, you guard them jealously, but, oh, okay. So only now is Anya aware of the stakes of all this, that, this is about Stella Stars, and, she hasn't exactly said that, oh no, if this doesn't happen, I'll be abandoned, but, that's kind of the subtext here, that things are gonna go wrong. Yor, to her credit, is willing to, go out and find ingredients if it'll mean this guy makes some. In a way that's kind of a tricky roundabout thing, because they didn't get the recipe, but they got the list of ingredients. And, it's not perfect per se, but it's certainly a starting point if you wanted to try and reverse engineer things. Of course, naturally, they're not doing that. They are behaving honorably, and they're instead gathering the ingredients as listed. I mean, I guess it does speak to, the collective character of the Forgers that they are playing by the rules here, even when that isn't necessarily what they need to do. And we do also have to remember, they are on a timeline here. Anya has school on Monday, and something tells me that Eden Academy doesn't exactly smile upon truancy, Even if there is, an actual excuse here. So, even as they're shopping, Lloyd can't help but, I guess, try and engender some affection with Yor, buying her lipstick. It seems to have kind of come out of nowhere, but, Oh, it hasn't come out of nowhere. It's the third thing Yor's friend warned her about. Sudden gifts out of nowhere are indicative of adultery. So, with all three signs present here, whether she wants to or not, Yor is going to be very concerned about cheating here, and it's like, look, it really isn't the case, but there's no real rational way to explain that to her immediately. The question is, now that she seems all glum, is she going to be like that for the rest of the movie? I certainly hope not. And I guess it is unfortunate that Lloyd's writing this off as being tired from traveling. Oh dear. So Anya's also caught sight of something that piques her interest, It seems to be like a Christmas market, which, that would be a very nice thing to go and see. Particularly as a child, I imagine that must be very magical. But, nevertheless, Lloyd remains practical. It's like, look, Anya, you can't go wandering off. You can't just, do whatever you want. We have things that need doing. Now, unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, orange syrup is a prize at a little shooting gallery. Now, something tells me this shooting gallery is kind of rigged here. It isn't exactly a fair game, but whether Anya does the shooting or whether Lloyd does it, I feel like, I don't know, they might just succeed. It is interesting that Anya's the one... Oh dear. So Anya's making her shot rather poorly, but I mean, it is to be expected. She's having trouble pulling back the slide. Yeah, so here we go, I guess. Anya determines that the game is in fact rigged, The things that they're meant to shoot are, essentially secured in place so you can't knock them over. Although, they are secured in such a way that maybe you could, do something else. If they won't fall backwards, maybe you could do a little trick shot, ricochet, and knock them the other way. In so doing, you win your prize, but you also expose the fraud here, seeing as how it's a metal bracket propping things up. So, Lloyd's decided he's going to try his hand here, and naturally, he's got to be an expert marksman. Although that's, wow, that's rather remarkable to have pulled a shot like that. And the other customers, understandably, they're starting to notice things, and they're none too happy about it. So, okay, this is interesting. It seems like Lloyd's pride is a bit pricked here, saying that, hey, I can prove it's not an accident. I can do it again. That seems kind of unusual for him, but I guess, tweaking that guy's nose is in order, seeing as how he's being a fair bit dishonest. So at this point, Lloyd has gathered all but one ingredient, and, my mental powers inform me that the last ingredient is going to be the key ingredient, and one that's exceptionally rare and hard to find. So naturally, there's going to be some considerable effort that needs to be undertaken to find it. Now meanwhile, Yor is just really glum. She's trying on the new lipstick and all that, but she's considering just leaving and heading home, which, that's grim, And meanwhile, I guess Lloyd's also kind of grim, saying that, how could a child have so much fun just riding on a little toy train like that? And as a former toy train enthusiast when I was very little, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just nice, And to be unable to understand it, I get it, Lloyd didn't exactly have a gigantic childhood, it having been curtailed by the war, but I feel like he should at least delight in the happiness of children, So unfortunately, Yor has decided the solution to her problem is to drink. And she's already a lightweight, but having consumed, by my count, 5 cups of what appears to be wine, it's over. She's gone. And, Yor's always been a temperamental drunk, shall we say, prone to, I don't want to say violence, because, that makes her sound like a domestic abuser, but I guess she is kind of prone to violence. Oh dear. So the question is, oh dear. I guess it's not a question. She's causing trouble. She's throwing Lloyd to the ground like that. That's, I guess it's fortunate that she passed out, she was about to ask the pivotal question, how do you feel about me? Which I feel Lloyd would answer adequately, but, man. This is verging on, real incident territory for Yor to have been extremely drunk in public and then passing out in public. Naturally, she's thinking of divorce here. Oh, dear. So Anya doesn't exactly have a good conception of what divorce is, other than it's very bad, courtesy of Becky here, but, I don't know, obviously divorce just kind of is out of the question. Lloyd wouldn't pursue something like that given the mission. So, Anya's intervening here. She wants to ride the Ferris wheel. And naturally she has her own ideas about it, but maybe this isn't always the case, but I've given to understand that Ferris wheels are sort of semi-romantic. And I guess this is, further clarified by the fact that Anya's refusing to go on and having them go by themselves. So, personally, I've never remarkably understood the romantic subtext to a Ferris wheel. I'm not a big enjoyer of heights, so I don't go on them, but I don't know. They always seem just a little too rickety for my comfort. So I guess the question is, to what understanding will Yor and Lloyd reach here? Because, they're given privacy to talk and all that, but I feel like they're probably not going to get to the root of the matter here. Lloyd naturally has noticed that she's not quite acting like herself and that things are not good, but, well, never mind. Yor's just coming out with it. The lady with the hat, she's your girlfriend, I'm inadequate. And yeah, there was a lady with a hat, and that lady does want to be the girlfriend, or the wife rather, but, nothing actually did happen. So I guess there's something to be said for being forthright here, talking things out, rather than just wondering and ruminating and pontificating about hypothetical situations. Now, oh dear, yours just really spilling everything that, I was worried you might divorce me over this. Yeah. I reckon that, getting drunk in public and starting a fight and passing out, that's serious incident territory. However, I feel like, if you're a good guy with a loving wife, you can kind of overlook that, Like, you can be mad about it, but that'll become a funny story, I reckon. Now, I do appreciate that they did call back to the hand grenade pin proposal. I remember reading that in the manga. Like, that's what sold me on this whole thing. There is something so incredible about that scene. I can't quite describe it in words. It's something about, like, the inadequacy of, like, a hand grenade pin being a stand-in for a wedding ring, but it being used nonetheless and there being sincerity involved. I guess that's all kind of out the window, seeing as how Yor just slapped him out of the Ferris wheel. Like, I get being embarrassed, but, like, maybe cool it. So, I guess naturally, Anya fears divorce is imminent here. But, man. That's deeply unfortunate. I wish that hadn't happened. But the wedding ring scene, like, I really do enjoy it. And even if their relationship is based on a lie, effectively, the sincerity about a proposal with a wholly inadequate ring is heartwarming to me. Because it does subtly communicate that it is about love and not about, the materials the ring's made out of. It's not a 5-carat diamond ring with 24-carat gold. It's a pin that was pulled off a hand grenade. But, if you really do love one another, then the ring doesn't matter so long as there is a ring. And, the wedding ceremony doesn't matter so long as you're both there. Like, it doesn't have to be a big, lavish party. Anyhow, Lloyd has finally revealed that cherry liqueur is the last thing they need, and it is, in fact, exceptionally hard to come by. And he sort of said to himself that he's gonna probably have to do it on his own. It might not be easy to do with Anya and Yor around, so it seems to me that this is where the plot starts getting tricky. The two are going to have to diverge, and it seems to me that it's almost like the bomb plot, Anya gets into trouble, Yor goes after her, Lloyd's doing spy stuff. Now, catching up with the Colonel here, he is in fact the Colonel, I was correct about that. He has what seems to be a gigantic Zeppelin, which, Zeppelins are just really cool, there's no two ways about it. But, yeah, this Colonel's not a good guy here. He just shot a guy because he was a mole. That guy was passing off information to Wise. Wise being Lloyd's agency. So, this guy, he's probably not a real good guy here. Something tells me he's planning something with that giant airship. And, interestingly enough, there was microfilm hidden in that chocolate. And, I guess the two guys have surmised it has been eaten. So, the plot's very tricky. The handler here doesn't know that her agent has been killed, and everyone's just sort of assuming that he has the microfilm. Okay, so interestingly, the handler's saying, like, look, some of you guys need to go to Phrygius and retrieve the microfilm. But, technically it is in Lloyd's possession, sort of, but, interestingly enough, Fiona volunteers for the mission, despite the handler saying, no, I'm gonna send someone else, and she just runs off to do it. So, Fiona's mind isn't exactly gonna be on the mission, things are gonna get real interesting. And I guess speaking of interesting, good old Lloyd Forger here, he can't buy the cherry liqueur, so he's instead breaking into the houses of the rich and famous to try and see if they have any cherry liqueur he can steal. And look, you know it's over when you have to do like a Mission Impossible descent on wires from the ceiling into a private wine vault. And I guess more to the point, why would cherry liqueur be stored in a wine vault? Because, as I've been given to understand it, there are different storage conditions required for wine than there are for, other forms of alcohol. Because most forms of alcohol, I reckon, are higher proof than wine, at least in terms of like liquor and liqueur. Cherry liqueur, it seems to me, is, if I had to guess, probably in the range of like 20 to 30% alcohol. So like, I don't think it has to be stored in a special vault, except for the fact that it's probably valuable. So, it's just Anya and Yor now at the hotel room. Well, and Bond too, but, he's probably more of a passive character in this, aside from occasionally seeing the future. So Anya's just getting into it as a child, playing spy and all that. I can't help but wonder if this is going to boil over into some serious trouble. If Anya were to, come across one of the other villains. So it is nice that Yor's feeling a little bit better, that she can, play with Anya in a carefree sort of way, but meanwhile, Lloyd's just struggling. No one has cherry liqueur, and he's running out of places to find it. Ooh, here we go. This is what I've been waiting for, Frankie. That poor guy, he's probably going to be saddled with finding cherry liqueur. And it's probably going to be a massive pain in the fundament. So, the poor guy, he seems to be hitting it off with a woman just in time for Lloyd to call him up on the phone. And naturally, that spoils the whole thing. He's very interested in this woman, but, oh dear. Unfortunately, she sort of insists that he's going to have to pick up the phone and see what's going on. Oh dear. So yeah, like that's all there is to it. Like, hey Frankie, can you get some chocolate liqueur by tomorrow morning? And it's like, he doesn't want to say no, but oh dear. So Frankie's gonna have to take half a day to travel to try and find this stuff. Like, he's really up the creek. No one adequately appreciates Frankie. The poor guy, he suffers, like he is put to work like you wouldn't believe, and poor guy can't even get a girl to look twice at him. I can only hope that Frankie does in fact save the day. The quiet, unsung hero finding the cherry liqueur. So, meanwhile, Lloyd seems to have found a lead to some cherry liqueur the next town over. Trouble is, he needs to rent a car to get there. And something tells me that this particular region, it's going to have some pretty snowy, impassable roads here. Like, it's going to be trouble. Ooh. So Anya, understandably, is upset that Lloyd spent the whole day working and all that, but, to sort of escalate it to saying, like, Papa, you lied, you said you'd be right back, like, I don't know, man. Like, I get it as a child, but, okay. So Anya, she's now of the understanding that this cherry liqueur is vitally important to the family's ongoing cohesion. But, oh, that's brutal. Like, Anya says, I want to come along too. Lloyd naturally says, no, you can't do that. So then he's like, oh, okay, I'm just in the way. I'll go to bed. It's like, oh. Man, Lloyd's gonna have some explaining to do later, because he's just leaving saying, like, hey, Yor, look after Anya. That's like, I get it, but, man. So good on Yor, I suppose, asking how many people does the car seat, and that seeing as how it's enough for all of them, saying, hey, why don't we all tag along? It's like, I get it, this is going to be dangerous, but, you do kind of have to take care of the family, too. So here we go, Bond is witnessing the future, and that's interesting, Bond is witnessing the location of some cherry liqueur. Naturally, Anya wants to help, but, I guess the question is, how is she going to, express that she knows? Oh no, they stopped short. The classic iconic joke is like, wait a minute, you can read people's mind and Bond can see the future? I guess I'm putting you up for adoption again. Like, they didn't go all the way with the joke. And I guess, it does make sense. Anya can't exactly tell them, but, surely she could manufacture some story to check out the store that does happen to have the cherry liqueur. And I guess tellingly, Yor is also bringing some baggage into this whole thing that, when she was young, her brother used to spend all day with her in the wintertime, and she enjoyed that, so, at the very least, you do kind of owe it to your kids to, do nice things for them to ensure they do have a nice life. So, it seems like it is sort of changing Lloyd's opinion that, like, yeah, maybe it wouldn't hurt after all. Because, like, yes, he is doing this for reasons of national security, but the sort of undercurrent to the plot here is that he's also doing this to maintain the family and, Operation Strix to a lesser degree. So, really, when you get down to it, he does kind of have to drag Anya along with them, even if it would make the mission a little bit harder. For someone who is so worried about divorce and all that, and, ashamed of her conduct, Yor's quick to say, like, look, why don't we all go together? This is a family vacation. And, to her credit, she is undoubtedly and indisputably correct. Oh, no. So room service has arrived. It's almost certainly Fiona, which... Ah, dear. So she's disguised, which is nice, but, oh boy. Yor's gonna be real suspicious if the woman with the hat shows up again. Oh, it's over. It's over. Oh, I can already see where this is going. Like, Yor's going to witness this. Fiona's gonna slip up. Yor is out of just, like, jealousy and misery. She's going to drink the whole bottle of cherry liqueur and get turbo wasted. Things are more over than previously thought possible. Especially now that Anya has absconded from the window to try and find some cherry liqueur. I mean, never mind that, like, I don't think they're gonna sell her any, but, well, I don't know. This is sort of like Europe in the 60s, so maybe they're a bit more lax about that. I know, like, French school children could have a little wine with lunch, but, yeah, so things have hit the fan a wee bit, because Fiona was sharing information about the microfilm and all that. Oh, no. Oh. Anya left an illegible note. Oh my god, it's over! It's over! Lloyd's going to assume it's his fault for being a jerk. And, I mean, in a bizarre sort of way, it kind of is, but, oh no! So not only is the Forgers looking for Anya, but the army is too. They're looking for a little girl because she has that microfilm, and, they're out in uniform with guns. Oh dear. So they've drawn like a rather horrifying sketch of Anya to identify her, but, it's accurate enough. And she's also right there. So, on the one hand, she has secured the cherry liqueur, which is remarkable in its own way, but on the other hand, the soldiers have witnessed her. They doubt it's her. They're not willing to stop her right away, but, oh dear. It seems as though someone else is willing to. When Anya says, hey, you're the chocolate thieves from the train, like, that's not exactly good for plausible deniability, Granted, they saw her, there's not much she can do. At least good on Bond. He's always been kind of a scaredy dog, but he was willing to sort of, like, leap and attack the reprobates. He didn't exactly do much, but, well, I guess he tried. That's kind of unfortunate. I would like Bond to have been a bit more efficacious. Because, there have been little bits of that in the manga with, Lloyd. There was a chapter where he and Lloyd were, like, walking and, like, causing trouble and stuff like that. But ultimately, Bond helped, save people from a burning building. And Lloyd said, like, okay, you're a good dog after all. And he, like, trained him a little bit about, how to attack bad people. Like, bite a limb, clamp down, and all that. So, through sheer happenstance, Lloyd has found Bond with Yor. And, alright, we're just, we're verging on Scooby-Doo here with Bond trying to communicate. Naturally he's not going to be able to, but, oh dear. He did manage to swipe a military insignia, so that's a clue, but, oh, Fiona, no. Go away, Fiona, you're going to cause trouble. I mean, she showed up at just the right time to offer Lloyd something. Probably a good little disguise, but, I don't know, man. Things are getting dicey real quick. So, Anya's been brought before the Colonel. This is not good. Naturally, they don't like one another. Anya's stolen those military secrets, presumably, and the Colonel stole her cake. So, oh dear. So that's something, Anya has not passed the microfilm, so that means she is currently in possession of it, and that also means they can't kill her until they get the possession of the microfilm once again. So Anya, knowing that her survival depends on holding it in, then I don't know, I guess a rough road lies ahead of her. Yeah, so unfortunately it seems like, nature might be calling. And, you can only deny the call of nature for so long. Like, at least with your bladder, like, that's a more urgent thing, because, your bladder can rupture, and that's no good. With the other thing, you can sort of maybe kind of stave that off, but only to a degree. The question is, what's gonna happen now? Because Anya seems to be on that airship, and that airship's taking flight. I mean, naturally, we see this old warplane, so clearly it's going to be used, whether or not it's actually up to the job. Alright, so that's a little convenient for Lloyd to sort of accidentally patch into the radio frequency where he just happens to hear Anya, and then overhear the two goons saying that, hey, you ate the microfilm. So, wow. So Lloyd's just telling Yor, it's like, hey, the military found a girl of about 5, so I'm assuming that's Anya, I'm gonna go pick her up. Like, yeah. I mean, perhaps he's making a big mistake here by telling her to keep her distance. I mean, when you get down to it, Yor's muscle, if nothing else, would come in handy here. And then, unfortunately, Yor is now realizing that she probably did beat up 2 military personnel, so, yeah, it seems like this is all sort of converging in a weird sort of way. It's interesting now that Yor is taking her own advice that a family should stick together on a family vacation, and that her solution to this problem is to run and jump and grab onto the tail fin of the plane. Or, I guess, part of the undercarriage. I guess it's nice that there happened to be a little hatch she can crawl into, because, I mean, it's probably a lot warmer in there than it is on the outside of the plane, but I wouldn't have put it past her to just hold onto the tail fin the entire time. Oh dear. So it seems like Anya's resisting the call of nature, but it's kind of a losing battle here. The question is... Well, never mind. She is being monitored at all times, so there's no hiding it, you know? Oh, dear. So it seems like it really is on the verge of being over, although I don't exactly envy the task ahead of those two guys of retrieving the microfilm. Because, like, realistically, like, the term microfilm, how big could it really be? You know, you're gonna have to be pretty thorough in your search. Like, it's just not good, you know? It's very messy business, but I suppose on the topic of national security, sometimes you just gotta do some stuff you wouldn't want to do. So, good on Fiona. She seems to have taken over a little military outpost whereby she can broadcast over the radio and access information. Oh, it's over. Lloyd's called her reliable, so now she's going to be highly unreliable, love-struck as she is. You know, something tells me she might be the weak link here. I mean, if nothing else, she's talking openly about being his wife for Operation Strix. You know, I think Lloyd had a headset for the radio, but like if it was just broadcasting in the plane and your hears that, like, it's over. Oh dear, this may well be the end. You know, Anya, like there's only so much that can be done to stave off the inevitable, you know? Okay, so I guess, like, I don't know if it's pain per se, but the effort of staving all this off is such that she is now hallucinating. And, like, you know it's not good when that happens. I guess it is kind of nice that Anya's hallucination is informing her that she has fought admirably for the sake of world peace, but there's, you know, nothing more that can be done here. So, I guess the question is, naturally the villains will come into possession of the microfilm, but what then, right? Because, I mean, it was information on a plan, so I assume once they're in possession of it, it's no longer any big deal, right? The big thing was that if it's smuggled out and given into the hands of Wise, then they could interfere, but, you know, it seems like that may no longer be an issue. Man, they certainly put some effort into this hallucination sequence, you know? And, I don't want to say it's necessarily misplaced, but, I think I might have preferred your, just, like, beating up some, villains. Yeah, you know, this is kind of interesting, I guess, with all those statues. You know, it's an interesting little pose they have there, but I suppose it does fit the subject matter. Okay, so, Anya... I guess Anya's, still not going for it. Alright, I guess I assumed she would, but... You know, I guess she just passed into a fugue state, and then, oh dear. So the Colonel has decided not to wait for it to pass naturally, but instead to just, you know, cut her open and retrieve it that way. Which, like... Yeah, that's bad. So, the real question is, do these guys have the stomach for that? You know, they're precisely the sort of idiots where I feel like they wouldn't have the gall to do something like that. But at the same time, orders are orders, and it's, you know, it's a military matter, so I feel like they They kind of have no choice here. I mean, they're immediately trying to fob the task off onto one another because, that's such a horrible thing. And I guess more to the point, like, I don't know if they even really have the facilities for such a thing, because perhaps naively, I assumed this would be a surgical procedure, but, something tells me that the Colonel is not exactly interested in this being painless or sterile. So, it's unfortunate that they came to a conclusion so quickly with a game of rock, paper, scissors, because, I certainly don't think I would be capable of holding down a child or cutting a child open in a situation like this. As much as I hate to say it, I think I would have to mutiny, So it seems like things are just really ramping up in every regard. The Colonel's ordering the airship to shoot down Lloyd's plane. And, given how this airship's kitted out, it's not good for Lloyd. I had never sort of assumed him being a pilot was part of his skill set, but evidently it is. I guess it is also kind of nice that the airship is using tracer fire here. This is something I learned about fairly recently, actually, that, I get why in film and in animation they use, bullets, they show them visibly, because normally you don't see bullets, except sometimes what are used are these things called tracer rounds, which have, what do you call it? Magnesium, I think. It basically leaves, a trail of light as it goes, and the idea behind it is that it's used by, squad leaders to fire and basically say to the rest of the squad, fire on this position where I'm firing, aim for that. So, I guess what I'm saying is, with my enhanced knowledge of military stuff here, the tracer fire might make it a bit easier for Lloyd to avoid things, even if, it's not quite so easy as simple bodily reflexes. He is operating a plane here, and a plane that, I'm given to understand it just sort of been, sitting around, not in use. Now, I do feel for all involved here, because, Lloyd, this is kind of above his pay grade, I imagine, because not only is he dodging gunfire, he's dodging missiles. For Yor's part, she doesn't have so much as a seatbelt, so she's rattling around the cargo bay. And, poor Anya, she's on the verge of being vivisected, and not in a good way. So, oh boy. Lloyd is, awfully bold to essentially try landing like that, on an airship, no less. Because, I have to imagine the airship can't be using hydrogen, right? Surely they wouldn't be. But if I were flying a plane nearby, I wouldn't want to take that risk, Because, surely they must be using helium, but on the off chance they weren't, this whole thing's gonna go up like the 4th of July with one stray spark. Oh dear. So, Yor's a bit confused about what precisely is going on here, and, I can't say I blame her. I doubt she expected the plane to crash on an airship. And more to the point here, this is a military vessel, so things are getting kind of serious, Oh dear. So, the weapons systems, I guess, have taken note of Yor. It is interesting that the weapon systems seem to be more advanced, for want of a better term. I can't imagine that this sort of thing would have existed in the 60s, it being a computerized camera system. I guess I would have imagined that the turret would have had, an actual gunner built in there looking out for things, but, for the anti-aircraft guns to fire on a person on the surface of the airship, that seems like it's asking for trouble to me. That seems like a really good way to blast off anything else on the surface of the airship. Because, when you're shooting at, a single person, like, yeah, a single hit would be absolutely devastating to them, but yeah, it's also liable to damage the ship too if you're not careful. And I feel like that guy pulling out a hand grenade was rather ill-advised. Because, like, yeah, Yora sort of fortified herself, but, like, what's the best case scenario? You blow a hole in your own ship, and something tells me the Colonel will not smile on that. I mean, really, I would assume that, like, the best course of action here is probably to send out, a group of guys to go handle her hand-to-hand. Of course, that wouldn't exactly work very well for them. Yor would be liable to tear them limb from limb, but yeah, it seems like things have really hit the fan in a big way, because that explosion started a fire, and that fire has spread to the engine room of all places. Fire is not a good thing to have on an aircraft, Now, the Colonel, he has said ominously that it's time for Type F to handle her. Whatever that means, it's probably not a good thing. Something tells me that however poorly the average soldiers might fare against Anya, this Type F creature, for want of a better term I suppose, is probably better equipped than most. Man, I'm wondering how much Scooby-Doo influence there is here between Bond sort of gesticulating and this little chase sequence that seemingly defies logic. Because that, in my mind, was sort of a staple for Scooby-Doo. So, Anya has decided that perhaps now she has the opportunity to go to the bathroom, but it might not be to her benefit to do so. Because, yeah, everyone else is sort of latched onto the idea that maybe they should cut her open here, but I don't think she knows that she should retain the microfilm for essentially Lloyd's use here. So I reckon now Lloyd's probably gonna adopt himself a disguise here. It would make sense, he would want to stroll around incognito. Although it is rather remarkable that he was able to just whip up a disguise so quickly. I guess I really can't hold that against the movie, but wow. I get it. I get why Yor would say, "Excuse me, I'm trying to find my husband and child, can you help me?" But, I don't know, maybe bothering these guys fighting a fire isn't, the best approach. I mean, I guess, in no small part because they drew their sidearms and fired on her, but, okay. So I guess it is important to remember that Yor's been doing all of this unarmed, and she is now armed, which makes her that much more dangerous. Okay, so Anya has disposed of the microfilm. Now the question is, what now? She's been found again, but having disposed of the microfilm, she's worthless to them, and therefore, they can just sort of kill her at their leisure. I mean, the Colonel made that pretty clear just with his own internal monologue. So, that fire has spread remarkably quickly with, this whole interior of, I guess, one of the two big balloons sort of entirely engulfed in flames. I mean, Yor's just sort of walking around and examining the place, but I feel like the better course of action would be to get off this thing before it, goes down in an uncontrolled manner. But unfortunately, Type F here, a person I suppose, has decided to intervene. And I can't help but wonder what Type F means, Okay, so he's got, some special firearm. Yeah, okay, this guy is, he's definitely special for some reason, and seeing as how he just took a knife to the noggin to, no ill effect, it seems to me that he's quite possibly not human. Or at the very least, augmented. Yeah, there we go. I guess the gun's part of his arm. So, is this guy a cyborg or something, or a robot? Oh boy. Yeah, well, there's no easy way out. You're gonna have to fight this guy. And, having inbuilt weapons as he does, I feel like he's, on the one hand, remarkably dangerous, but on the other hand, probably easier to confront in hand-to-hand combat, because, if his one hand is a Gatling gun, I feel like Yor might be able to just, grapple the guy and, handle him that way, because, he's not going to be able to reach and grab her with that arm. Okay, so Anya used one of the bathrooms, and I guess it does make sense that they would, retain sewage rather than just, jettison it, but, oh dear. So the Colonel has decided that, hey, it's possible that, it's still within her body, so, we'll just keep her around, we'll cut her open later after we take care of this intruder business. I get it, but, man. Aw, dear. So, as bad as the task of finding the microfilm might have been for those two lackeys, it's infinitely worse now, because the Colonel's ordering them to just, start sifting through the sewage tank. I mean, good luck, guys. Oh, dear, indeed. Alright, so Lloyd, he's getting, a funny little clue here that, these guys know something. And okay, well, I guess he's not interrogating them, he's just walloping them for the fun of it. I mean, I get it, he would want to pay them back for whatever they must have done to Anya, but perhaps using his assumed rank, he could have interrogated them just a little bit. Although it seems like something's going on here. Alright, well, I guess it does make sense that perhaps Anya would have been confined somewhere, rather than just on the bridge where she could potentially cause trouble. She's been tied up in, I guess, the captain's quarters or something like that. Or the colonel, as the case may be. The question is, what's Lloyd gonna do about this? Because, he doesn't want to leave the bridge, but he can't exactly linger when the colonel's telling him to go away, but, oh! I mean, I get it. Desperate times call for desperate measures, but for Anya to just headbutt the pipe like that to make noise, oh, man. I don't know how she could have the force of will to do such a thing. That's gotta hurt remarkably. Alright, so Lloyd, he's sort of dropped the button, sort of surreptitiously to give himself an excuse, but, I don't know, the Colonel seems like a shrewd man. I don't know if he's gonna go for it. I guess if he's so perceptive as to determine the amount in grams of sugar in various types of dessert, I guess he's able to determine that Lloyd's an imposter by sense of smell alone. So, however great his disguise was, it wasn't enough, and now he's in the position, unenviably, of having to, shoot it out with these guys in the bridge, decidedly outnumbered. Wow. So, good old Type F here. He sure is punching a lot of holes in the ship here at this gunfire, in a way that seems rather inadvisable to me. Because he's also shooting at a bunch of, scaffolding and stuff above him. And, it may well just, fall down. Because, it's gotta be significantly structurally weakened by the fire, as it is. Yeah, this strikes me as being not remarkably advisable on his end, but I don't know. They presumably didn't augment his brain like they did his body. Now, Yor, to her credit, has decided that, like, the combat knives weren't working, so maybe, like, an axe intended to hack open doors during a fire is probably the thing to use. And, like, wow. So she's hacked the guy open with an axe, and, like, his chest seemingly doesn't contain vital organs, but instead contains, like, an ammunition hopper. I have to wonder where his organs went, because I feel like the guy still needs them, you know? But, yeah, this is surprisingly, sci-fi-esque for Spy Family, which, you know, it's not exactly grounded per se, but it didn't strike me as being fantastical like this, you know? I guess maybe the clues were in, like, you know, Anya and Bond both being sort of like illicit scientific experiments and stuff like that. Or at least that's the implication. So I guess, you know, maybe a cyborg isn't necessarily beyond the pale. I mean, I guess from a writing perspective, it does kind of make some degree of sense. You'd need to have someone who can stand up to Yor when she's already visibly beaten the brakes off of large groups of people. You know, like, there needs to be something that allows someone to stand up to her. Now, meanwhile, things are tenuous. You know, the Colonel is resorting to gas weaponry, which strikes me as, like, real war crime territory. You know, you can't be doing that. But, Lloyd was the only one without a mask, and with Anya accidentally hitting, like, the emergency ventilation button, I reckon he's probably got the time he needs to find a mask, or at least some other mitigating factor. Oh, better than that, he's disguised himself as the Colonel. I guess it makes sense, you know. The one guy who's able to suss him out is no longer able to do that, and, you know, the men are probably too scared of the Colonel and too worried about, you know, making the wrong move to do anything. I guess it does make sense here that, like, he doesn't have to fool the Colonel, he just has to fool the troops. And I guess seeing as how he's managed to narrow the fight down to one-on-one, Lloyd is at least able to hold his own ground where that wasn't the case against half a dozen people with guns. Yeah, here we go. He's finally, like, doing some real good stuff, fighting kinda dirty, as is, you know, perhaps his prerogative as a spy. You don't have to be super honorable at a time like this. Now, the question is, will the troops go for it? I guess Lloyd has at least said, perhaps the best possible thing in this situation, that, like, hey, do you have such little faith in me that you think an imposter would succeed over me? And, on the other hand, he is saying, like, hey guys, time to abandon ship, this thing's on fire. Which is reasonable, but it seems to me that the Colonel wouldn't necessarily give that order. Okay, so that's interesting. He's playing it as, like, you know, the honorable officer saying, like, look, you guys abandon ship first, I'm staying here for the time being, I'll go down with the ship if I have to. That doesn't strike me as being the type of person the Colonel is, but, you know, I guess the soldiers are gratified by it enough to go along with it. So unfortunately for Yor here, it seems as though her strategy isn't working. You know, Type F is kind enough to inform her that he's not going to be running out of ammunition anytime soon, so there's no sense in waiting him out here. Very unfortunate indeed, because Yor seems to have blunted her weapons on his metallic body. I don't know what she's got planned. Like, she's probably going to have to bury him in flaming wreckage or something. So this is something. You know, we don't really have a huge window into what the overarching goals were here for the military, but Type F is good enough to inform us that he doesn't care about the fate of the East or the West. So, seemingly, he and by extension his organization are a third party to the little Cold War that's brewing. They don't have a vested interest in either side, necessarily. You know, if I had to make a guess here, they just want to start war for the sake of war. In the sense that, you know, they are soldiers, war is what they do, so, you know, you might as well have a war if you're a soldier. I mean, that logic does kind of hold, even if it isn't exactly great. Oh dear. So Yor's broken her last weapon, but, seemingly that was enough. You know, she... Oh no. Lipstick. Okay, she's used the lipstick, and I'm not exactly sure what the purpose is here. Oh. That's interesting. I guess lipstick is partially made of oil, so it would be flammable. She's managed to encircle him in a wall of flame. I guess if you're gonna get rid of the cyborg, immolating the guy is probably the way to do it, and, seeing as how he is apparently full of ammunition, that means he's, unfortunately liable to cook it off if he catches fire. You know, that's far more brutal than I, had assumed would have been the case, you know. Wow. So, it seems like everyone has sort of survived more or less, you know. Lloyd survived, he saved Anya. Yor has gotten away from the cyborg. Anya's also got the cherry liqueur, you know, the big important thing that they came here for. So this is something, you know, Lloyd can finally make it clear that it's like, look, you don't always get in the way, you're a good kid and all that, you did good, you found the cherry liqueur I couldn't find. That's nice. It would be nice to patch everything up. Especially because, like, you know, for a little while there, things were getting quite grim in a way that I don't necessarily approve of, you know. Like, one of the things I really do enjoy about Spy Family is that, generally speaking, it is pretty lighthearted, you know, with the occasional, rather harrowing references to war here and there, and, you know, the occasional really grim flashback. By and large, things are pretty lighthearted. So, when you get into stuff like actual serious contemplation of divorce and Anya feeling that she's a burden and getting in the way, like, you know, I'd rather they didn't do that. Or at the very least, you know, undo it by the end. Oh, geez. Yours making the justification that, like, I'm on the plane because a family should, go together. And it's like, I mean, I guess, you know, if that's the story and you're sticking to it, fair enough, but, it is also interesting that Anya's just, spilling all the information about the chocolate she ate in the microfilm. I do find it interesting that in her mind that these guys are like chocolate thieves. Oh dear. So Lloyd's just going along with it. It's like, oh my god, these guys are chocolate thieves. I've heard of them. They stole this military vessel. And yours just going along with it. I mean, I get it. Like, she's not exactly in a position to say, like, wait a minute, that's silly, but, it is kind of unfortunate that the upshot of all of this is that Anya's being scolded. I feel like that should be of secondary importance to, getting off the burning airship that is increasingly structurally unsound by the second. And, you know, more to the point, I don't know if they have a way off the vessel, right? I mean, surely, like, worst case scenario, they should perhaps find a parachute or something, but I guess if things weren't bad enough, you know, the airship is on a collision course with a populated area, so like, the thing's bound to have all sorts of munitions and things. Like, if it crashes on fire, it's gonna blow up. It'll be a big conflagration. People will die. It's not gonna be good. And, if that weren't bad enough, it seems to be the Christmas market, no less, which, when you get down to it, that's perhaps the worst possible target, but also the one that makes sense. You need to have dramatic stakes. So, the question is, what can be done with this crippled vehicle to avoid a horrible collision? And, I don't know, like, the rudder works and that seems to be about it. So, I guess just bank hard to one direction and hope for the best, really. There is the question of, how are the forgers going to survive a collision? Because I feel like that is also something to be wary of, Like, it's one thing if you crash a car, like, you can survive that, but if you crash, like, an airship, I don't know. Because, like, you don't exactly have a seatbelt, really, so you're liable to really just, like, go flying and knock your head on something, which, historically, that's not good for the human body. I do appreciate that the whole family is getting in on trying to turn the rudder. It is like a nice little bit of unity in these last few moments. I guess it is just unfortunate that they're headed right for that building, whatever it is. I can only assume it's like a cathedral or something, but... Man. It's a really good thing yours there with their prodigious physical strength to just turn the rudder like that. That's something else. Like, I imagine the rudder would be fairly hard to turn, but surely they'd have, like, gears or something. Like a nice little system of gears to work and help you turn it more easily, but... I don't know. I guess I won't hold it against them too much. So naturally, this is, like, a big problem, because, like, the airship, it's punched full of holes, it's liable to sink probably pretty quickly. The question is, how could the forgers have possibly survived something like that? And naturally, Fiona, having witnessed this, is concerned for Lloyd. Maybe she should be concerned for, like, the civilian and the child, usurpers though they are to her romantic life, but, I almost feel she needn't have worried, because, like, how could such a silly thing kill the greatest spy to have ever lived, So, they all seem to be no worse for wear. Well, I take that back. They've been doused in water in freezing conditions, so things are back to being kinda grim again, but, at least there's a nice ambiance. They saved the day and all that. Although I suppose there is the question of getting back home on Monday, because Anya does have school after all, and... Oh, that's mighty convenient. She just sneezed up the microfilm. Wow, I bet I bet all those guys feel really silly that the microfilm was caught between Anya's teeth. Oh dear, indeed. So, I guess really all's well that ends well, The forgers have survived to live another day, and... Man... For something that was intended in part to be a vacation, that was an awfully busy thing, and I guess unfortunately there is the matter of the baking assignment. So, however busy they were with all this military stuff, they're gonna have to do other things too. I reckon Lloyd would probably, stay up late doing the baking himself. So it is nice that we check in on Yuri, the poor guy, having not been involved. Naturally, he assumes that Lloyd was involved, though, he doesn't know Lloyd by name. That is good, I guess, that in the end, Lloyd did manage to get away clean. Oh, wow. That really is tiny. I guess it makes sense, it being a microfilm. Yeah. I do find it interesting that that's how he smuggled it, underneath the label on a wine bottle. Oh, dear. So, it seems like Lloyd almost not need have bothered, The guy who would have usurped his mission has been found to be an adulterer and therefore is ineligible. Man, there really was a thread of infidelity threaded through this whole thing. And I guess it's good that, Lloyd really wasn't doing anything untoward. But I guess that does tie a neat little bow on it, that adultery is bad and you shouldn't do that. You should love your wife. And, you know what? I agree with that assessment. So, Lloyd's done with mission stuff for the day. So it seems like there's probably going to be a little bit more family business. Likely baking that dessert, if I had to guess. Now, can't help but wonder what Lloyd's thinking about all this, watching them. Because I feel like, ooh. Okay, so he's of the mindset that he shouldn't let his guard down here. And I guess that does make sense, but he's also sort of confirming to Anya surreptitiously that, things will keep going. But I would have liked a little affection for the family, even if he does have to quash that stuff down by virtue of being a spy. Just a little admission to us, the audience. Oh dear. So Lloyd knows. It's like, look, if you want to win that Stella Star baking for class, you can't help do the baking. Probably for the best. Like, what would happen if Yor did do that and then, the dessert in question poisoned the school principal? Like, it would be over. I mean, if he's eating all sorts of dessert, you probably can't tie the food poisoning to any one person, but, So I guess Anya's doing the baking in school by herself, and that kind of strikes me as being a bit dangerous, considering that it seems to be a bit of an old-fashioned dish with a plethora of ingredients. It is also interesting that Damien's sort of mocking her choice of dessert, saying that, like, oh, it's old-fashioned, who would want that? But, Anya sort of unwittingly has the insider information that this is like a cultural thing the principal might appreciate. I guess the question is, will Anya's own ineptitude at baking win out here? Because something tells me she's not exactly up to the task of baking something perfectly edible. I mean, I feel like that's sort of like a known thing by the judge going into it, that a kindergartner is not exactly going to bake super well, but, oh dear. So it was all for nothing, the kitchen suffered a malfunction and therefore, baking won't work. They can't do it, the thing's postponed, and, well, that's a shame. Although, on the other hand, Lloyd has some more insider information about what the vice principal might like, and this might necessitate a trip somewhere else, so, is this a little tease for Spy Family Movie 2? I mean, it certainly could be the case, I suppose. I wouldn't say no to that. I guess interestingly, they're playing up the idea of like a more tropical vacation. Probably like southern Italy if I had to guess based on what they're saying, but... Well, that's something. Bond has informed us that the vacation will be a lovely one. That would be nice. I think I would like to see that. Well, this has been a rather enjoyable movie. I'm sort of sorry I slept on it for so long, Not that I had an opportunity to see it when it was in theaters, but probably could have watched it earlier than I had done. Yeah, I think I'll probably have to sleep on it to really gain like a full picture of the film, to really collate my thoughts, but, by and large, it was pretty enjoyable. The only thing that I'm really kind of disappointed on is we didn't see any more of Frankie. It was just the one scene. And, I get it. Frankie's a minor character and he wasn't super involved in the plot of the film, but I would have liked a little scene at the end where he arrives with the cherry liqueur just in time to be too late, Just a little something like that, just to kick the man while he's down, I mean, if it were really up to me, I would like to give Frankie a W. The poor guy needs it, but I suppose I could settle for him suffering too. But yeah, by and large, this was rather enjoyable. We got a nice mix of Anya stuff, Yor stuff, and Lloyd stuff. A little bit of Fiona here and there, and fair bit of action. If I had to point out a criticism, I guess I would have liked a little bit more from that cyborg. We did get a fair bit, but just, I don't know, maybe a little bit more. Like, slightly more motivation, perhaps. I reckon, he's not remarkably autonomous in his own right, but, oh well. I suppose I can't criticize it too harshly. Yeah. It's hard to believe that it was, well, was it 2.5 years ago this came out? I think it was. It's that was what? December 2023-ish? Yeah, it's been a while. Now, I do wonder where this fits in continuity-wise, because, seeing as how, nothing really happened by the end, everything sort of returns to the status quo, it doesn't affect the wider plot, so I feel like it can kind of go anywhere, but, anywhere within reason. I guess, it would be interesting to know, just for the purposes of, watch order, I guess. Because, anime movies, in my view, they've usually been sort of supplemental or non-canon. You take the Dragon Ball Z movies, those are all sort of bonus fan service sort of things, but they don't really tie into the main thing as a whole. And largely by virtue of just how, the canon works, they don't fit in. But then you take something like the Konosuba movie. That one actually does adapt one of the light novels in its entirety, and therefore has a definite place in the timeline. But with something like this, it's sort of at an odd middle ground, whereby it doesn't contradict anything, and it doesn't necessarily fit into the timeline, but there's nothing that precludes it from doing so. So, I think, if I remember correctly, this came out before the third season, so, it could slot in right there between the second and third seasons nicely, and there wouldn't be any problem with that. And, frankly, I don't think I would disagree with that either, but, I don't know, maybe I'll have to look up, interviews or something with the author, see what he says on the matter. Because I reckon he probably would have been asked at some point, If I were interviewing him, I would think to ask that, hey, about your new movie, where does it fit in? Something like that would be kind of interesting to hear, just because, I find continuity and stuff like that interesting, just because there are some works where, yeah, it has an order based on how it's broadcast, but it need not necessarily be watched in that order. Cowboy Bebop springs to mind. I've heard it said that you can, with the exception of a few key episodes, watch it in basically any order you want. Accounting for the introduction of specific characters who show up in later episodes. So now that we're reaching the end of the credits here, I can't help but cling to the vain hope that we might see just a little bit more of Frankie. It would make my day. You know, I would be very happy just to see the poor guy show up at the Forger residence just in time for Lloyd to turn him away because, yeah, no, it's too late. Oh, here we go. Oh, it's even worse. Is he in Phrygia? Like, he traveled there to find him. I don't think the poor guy deserves that. Well, it was all I could hope for, that little scene at the end. Well, that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.